Mangold. That is a, what's that called again? The catch box? Yeah, so we throw this at the audience and they can ask questions and it comes through the speakers.
Wow, that's how IMAX of you.
First of all, before we get started, I want to make sure Remsen is all set with the cameras.
Remsen, are you all set?
I'm all set.
Can you hit us with a little more light, Remsen? So
We did a screening on Tuesday night, and I couldn't see the audience. We did
right, but that's not something Remsen should be proud of.
No, it wasn't Remsen that night.
It's like, are you doing a Revlon shoot?
Yeah,
Steve?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't screw around. So before we get started, I want to give a huge thank you to IMAX for being an awesome sponsor.
Thank you, IMAX.
A huge thank you to 20th Century Fox, Carol over there. Thank you for letting us screen the movie before it was in theaters. Seriously, a huge thank you, and thanks to all of you guys for coming out on a weeknight to see the movie.
Thank you.
Before we started, by the way, it was a pretty good presentation here, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, incredible.
Just making sure. Yeah. So before we jump into, first of all, thank you so much for doing this Q&A. Thank you.
I like doing these things with you, Steve. It's fun.
You know, the last time we did one was Logan.
That's the last movie I made.
Exactly. But I'm just saying, that's still...
Was I supposed to do one in between?
No, but I wanted to just say that it's one of my favorite Q&As that I've ever done, because you were just awesome in terms of breaking down the superhero genre, what you liked, what you had. It was just a great Q&A, and so I just want to thank you for the last one.
Thank you.
I have a few fun questions before we get into your fantastic movie, because we'll see if they're fun in 2 minutes. What TV show would you love to guest direct?
Well, Game of Thrones would have been the answer until it stopped.
Okay. What movie do you think you've seen the most?
There's a group of them. Sweet Smell of Success. Thank you. All the President's Men. It's a Wonderful Life. Jaws, Alien, a whole series of westerns, Floating Weeds, a lot of Ozu films. I mean, there's stuff I watch repetitiously, almost as a kind of just reminder. Black Narcissus, Michael Powell film. I could keep going, but I couldn't think of one.
Do you remember what it was when you were growing up that first made you fall in love with movies? And what was it, if you can remember, that maybe flipped the switch in your head that said, I want to do that?
Well, I mean, the first one, with Star Wars, was a religious experience for me when I saw it at 13 or 14. When I saw it, I was on a trip with my aunt and uncle to see Yellowstone Park. And they lived in Chicago, I lived in New York. And so I flew to Chicago to meet up with my aunt and uncle, and my uncle took us to see Star Wars at a big theater in Chicago the day before we left to Yellowstone, and then we had 2 weeks camping out. And the point of saying this is that I don't remember anything about Yellowstone. All I did was call my parents from Old Faithful and say, like, you have to see this movie. And that I loved movies before that. I mean, I was already making films with my dad's Super 8 camera, but that movie, and of course, growing up at that moment, the culture, Steven Spielberg, George, that whole world of these 28 to 32-year-olds making these movies was mind-blowing. And the other funny story I have where Alien had a similar effect was a couple years later, but I saw it on opening day in New York alone in a theater. I went to like the 10 a.m. show at the Lowe's 84th, whatever, and the
near Zabar's.
Yes, and I was alone in the theater, and I didn't know what the movie was, and it scared the shit out of me. And riding home, I had the joy of telling a story to Ridley Scott a couple of years ago, but riding home, there was some talk radio guy my dad was listening to, and he was on ABC Talk Radio, and he was saying what a piece of shit the movie was. And he was saying, the monster, it isn't even scary, man. And I was like going nuts in my parents' car going, what are you talking about? And I ran home, and this was the day of rotary dials, and I dialed the WABC talk radio number 1,000 times from my parents' attic and got online on the air. And the guy said, here's Jim from Washingtonville, wants to talk about an alien. What a piece of shit, Jim. And I was like, it was not. and he's like, yes, it was. That creature looked like the Cookie Monster. And I was like, no, it didn't. And he was like, goodbye, Jim. that was my radio, my early radio appearance.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I want to jump, we're about to get into your movie, but have you ever watched a TV show all the way through more than once?
No. I mean, except for when I was 8. I've probably seen every season of Gilligan's Island, The Brady Bunch, I Dream of Jeannie, and I mean, that stuff, yes. But no, in recent life, no. I think once is enough.
What was the last thing that you were really obsessed with?
Thing?
Yeah, it could be like a book, a movie, it could be a play. I mean, collecting shows.
I go through phases with music, but I can't tell you because it would give away what I'm working on.
Does it have to do with a large cat?
No.
There was I can't remember the title, but I heard that there was a movie.
It's in development, but no, it has nothing to do with that one.
Got it. Now let's jump into why I get to talk to you tonight.
Okay.
As I've said repeatedly, I love this movie so much. I'm going to fish for the audience, but did you guys enjoy this?
Thank you.
What was it? Obviously, you're an in-demand filmmaker. What was it about this project that said, this is what I'm going to do after Logan?
I've been chasing it since before Logan and since before even the Wolverine before that. In fact, the meeting I went on in Fox where they handed me Chris McQuarrie's script for the Wolverine was the meeting in which I went in to talk about this movie. And the challenge with movies like this, it was another team was working on it, and I was not welcome. And but the reality is the reason it's so hard to get movies like this made is that it's not what they call in business IP. It's not pre-existing trademarked stuff where there's a pre-sold audience that's going to show up to see this character or this world in this movie. And so when that's the case, the studios are very nervous about spending too much money on a movie like that, what we used to just call an original movie. And so what that results in is when you have a movie like this, where there's no real way to do it without spending dough, meaning you can't just creating the races and the cars and the period, it's not going to be cheap. And so the movie gets stuck. In a way, luckily for me, it got stuck in that no one would pull the green light on it because they couldn't figure out how to make it affordable enough, or they wanted to take the risk on it. And what basically happened is I would check in between every movie about this property and this material, and after Logan, it was free, and I got together with Jez Butterworth and John Henry Butterworth, and we kept working on the script. Part of it was to get it to where we could afford to make it, and also just there were ways I wanted to shape the script. I loved the characters. I loved, I'm not a big motorsports guy. In fact, I'm the opposite. Like, I don't think I've ever successfully watched a race from beginning to end, except this one. But that even gave, what I loved and identified with was the world of getting these cars on the road seemed a lot like my life, like getting movies made. And I found the characters really inspiring, that they kind of really, Ken Miles is this kind of perfectionist who I really identify with, who is kind of, isn't really thinking rationally, gets himself in trouble with taxes in any way. He's just in pursuit of, he's an artist in a sense. And Shelby is a kind of slightly more interesting figure in that he's a salesman. He's also an artist, but he's kind of a salesman. And so there's this kind of interesting dialectic going on between these two characters who admire each other, but both are kind of not exactly in the same philosophical place. And when you're looking for a movie, you're essentially always looking, you have to be aware, I am, that movies are simple in a sense. They have to work on a very primal level. They also need a cinematic idea, like making a movie about what I just described isn't good enough, meaning it would be My Dinner with Andre, you know, it'd be just two people sitting around talking about their life perspectives, unless you can find a way to take these ideas about art versus commerce and perfection versus compromise and pursuit of excellence and how do you, and that the world of a racing film or a sports film gives you a framework to make something entertaining and engrossing and dynamic out of it, where even the cars then become, you know, metaphors and interesting elements. I mean, all that, and then cars have a beautiful relationship with the movie camera, you know, so all that was in the mix of why I was attracted to it, and I just kept stalking the movie until after Logan, maybe just because of the success of Logan, but it suddenly had become free enough that I could jump in.
You sit down to rework the script to get it down to a budget that is something filmable. How much, when you're reworking the script, are you thinking about casting, or is it sort of like we got to get the script down, and that's like the most important thing?
You're thinking about all of it, but you don't have a movie without the people. So from the moment I get involved, in fact, most of the effort to get the money down was happening after I had Christian and Matt involved, meaning that I would have no chance of getting the studio to make this movie unless I had stars in it of some kind. So that it just wouldn't happen. Like, even if I could get the money down without Christian and Matt, the money would have to go down further. And that because they're just looking for an angle on how to get your butt into a theater, and without stars, and without being able to say it's a Marvel character or a Star Wars character or a Terminator character or whatever it is, there's so many of the tokens that they normally get to spend to get you out to the theater that they don't have, that known actors are one of the few remaining they have. And so in a way, the budget was determined by who I had in the movie. And luckily, the first two people I asked jumped in.
Matt, I mean, listen, those two are two of the best actors working. How tough? What is it like sitting down? I mean, you've worked with Bale before. What is it like? Do you still get nervous, like the night before you're going to sit down with them to talk about the project? Like, man, I really want them to be, like, I need them, I want them. Or is it sort of like, do you know what I mean?
Well, you do a little, but it works. I mean, it kind of works differently in the sense that it really is all about the script. So you get nervous to get the script right before you send it to them. And then you send it to them, because at least this is the truth for me. Certainly these two guys, they know who I am, and they know my work, and in the case of both of them, I've known them both for almost 20 years. So in this particular case, I'm not nervous about screwing up the meeting so much as I have a feeling they're probably going to know whether they're doing the movie or not before they show up. Meaning, if they've read the script and they know me, it's kind of like but the other way you think about it is once you're doing the meeting and they've read the script, you kind of know you've almost got them. You can only fuck it up. Like, it's like if they're coming, no actor wants to go on a meeting on a movie where they're waiting for the director to talk them into doing it. Meaning it can happen, but usually they have to see it in some way. They have to feel it, or else they're going to need you to talk them into it every day. Meaning that they need to get it themselves.
So, if you don't mind, do you remember what it was like that first time you talked to Bale and Damon, and maybe some of the questions they had about anything, or what was those first conversations like?
Matt was really simple. He very cut and dry questions about the script, and the very, very, very dry, simple questions about how some things he missed or he thought we could use or whatever, but he liked the script a lot. Christian too liked the script a lot. So if you want to kind of know about the process with them, it's, it becomes a kind of long-term, year-long or longer exchange of ideas. Each actor, Matt and Christian, have different ways of communicating. Matt will do it more often, kind of hanging out and talking. Christian, you'll get these wonderful I think Christian will do that too, but you'll get these wonderful kind of stream of consciousness emails about what he's been thinking about and researching, and each of them have a kind of their own way and of offering you their psyche, their instincts. I mean, if you can recognize it. One of the biggest things I've come to feel, I teach directing sometimes, and one of the biggest things I feel like it's hardest for younger directors to embrace is the idea of taking ideas from your collaborators. And I don't think as filmmakers we help, because when we do our press, we try our best to make it look like everything was in our heads before the movie started, so that every young filmmaker thinks they need to have everything in their head envisioned. Like almost the question, I'll get in situations like this, I'll get a question like, did you see this all exactly this way in advance? And of course, the tremendous gravitational pull of your ego is a yes, but it's a lie, of course. The biggest thing I've learned making movies is that they look better when you take advantage of what's happening as opposed to what you brought only. It's like life. Like everything is better when you're actually listening and watching and not living inside your head. So that this idea of arriving with everything preset is flattering, and you certainly arrive with an agenda, but it is in that dialogue that I can give you examples of how I discovered making this movie a long time, Copland, where in the first week I was directing the movie, and when I'd ride home from dailies, they'd give you this manila envelope with all the stills from the set that the stills guy had taken during that week. And I was looking at all the stills guys' stills on the first week of shooting, and they all looked better than any of the frames I was making. And what was the difference? The difference was I had my storyboards, and I had figured it out, and this is how it was covered, and I knew I was going to shoot it this way. And so then I did it. But he just had a camera, and he saw Sly standing there and Bob De Niro standing there, and he found this great angle here. And it was like he was living in the moment, using the light and the moment and the way the light was falling on the buildings, the way these actors looked on that day, and where they ended up with blocking. And I, out of fear of, if I leave my little shot list, I'll lose my map, my AAA map of getting through the day, that I wasn't looking. And so it's the big lesson for me in every instance with collaborators in my crew, with my actors, with everything, is be listening. They have great ideas, and it's easy to say no to them. You just say, no, I don't want to do that. But it's incredible how many directors shut down the dialogue before it even starts, and don't get the benefit of all these other ideas.
One of the things that I commend you for is in all your movies, I think you bring out such great performances from your actors. And you told me recently that you got a little advice from Robert De Niro on Copland that really changed the way, I guess, maybe you approach with actors.
He had this process when he decided to do a role in Copland. He had this process where he would just invite. I lived near him, and we had a couple reasons. I think he kind of was curious about me in a friendly or paternal way. Both our dads were painters, fine artists in New York. He lived not far from where I lived in Lower Manhattan, and but he would ask me over without kind of what I could perceive as an agenda, other than hanging out. And then he would be like, "Well, why don't we let's read through the script." And so then it would just be me and him with ginger tea reading through my whole screenplay, with me playing everyone that he wasn't playing. And first of all, you get this moment of going like, I'm doing scenes with Bob De Niro in his house with ginger tea, which is all very cool. But the other part is he just makes you, what I realized he was doing was just hanging out and getting used to each other. And that there was a point at which he said to me, I haven't worked with a lot of young directors. And he goes, the reason why is they're all like in awe of me. And he goes, and I need the director to tell me stuff. So I don't want you to be shy. And he goes, so when I'm doing the scene, tell me what you need. And he goes, I don't mean after you say cut. I mean before you say cut, while it's still rolling. In fact, your voice won't even bother me while I'm acting if you just shout at me what you need. And I was like, okay. And then we started shooting, and I did what he said, which is if I felt like he was off, I go, take that again, come on, whatever. I just, something brief, and he loved it, and he'd attack the scene again, and I saw, this was particularly his process, is that Bob kind of gets in a zone, and he doesn't want, when you say cut on a movie, you know, all these people descend with their combs and their blowers and their tape and their measuring and there's all this reset, and if you're an actor and you're kind of in it, all that can fall out of you. You know, all that you can lose the scene while people are making all their stuff perfect, and you can lose whatever that churned up moment. You're kind of feeling it. It's like a wave, and you're riding it, and then it's gone. So, and Bob taught me that I can be of help in keeping even someone like that, someone that esteemed. I can be of assistance, and he's looking for me to be of assistance to him, to keep him in the zone, to demand more of him. And that was the first month I was shooting that movie. And so when Bob De Niro is acting that way and inviting that kind of dialogue with me, then you have Sly Stallone and Ray Liotta and Harvey Keitel and all these other guys on the set who are watching, oh, Bob and this guy, really, they get a good thing going, you know? And suddenly they're all like, yeah, tell me, what do you need? And so suddenly he set this tone for everyone, you know, on the movie that was, Jim's cool, do what he says. And that movie, I mean, can you imagine entering the movie? You know, you're like 30 years old, you have Bob De Niro, Harvey Keitel, Ray Liotta, Pete Berg, who am I leaving out? The entire cast of this future Sopranos, and and they were all, it was easy, you know, they were lovely, and it was really about Bob teaching you to get to me what the lesson was, sorry for rambling, was about get in the dirt with me. Don't talk to me like I'm a specimen or some kind of strange exotic alien or creature. Don't use a special language, just act with me, you know, like get in here and do this scene with me. How, you know, and that combined with other lessons I've gotten along the way has been really useful in terms of, I can't tell you how many, because I've taught a lot, that how many younger film sets I've seen where the actors are over there and the crew's over here, and a rehearsal is kind of, for a young director, this scary moment. You have to talk to these people, and they have ideas, and it's all, and yet hanging out with your DP and your tech friends is all fine, with your American Cinematographer magazines, and yabba, no stress here. But when I have to deal with them, very stressful. And it's like, why? Part of the reason they're over there is because you put them over there. You know, why aren't you with them? And I don't know how to explain it. For those of you who do any of these things I'm talking about, maybe you'll recognize what I'm talking about. But it's a really important thing, I think, to find your friendship with the actors before you even start to ask for anything else. Your kind of, a language, some kind of vernacular between you that allows you to do what is really an intimate dance, you know, for a long period, for months.
Bale and Damon and all your supporting characters and even the background people in this are tremendous. Talk a little bit about being on set with everyone and maybe how you've changed as a director, or is from Copland, did that sort of, I guess I'm curious, what are you like on set now, and because you've managed to shape these great performances?
Well, you'd have to ask someone else what I'm like to get a really good objective answer, but I think I'm pretty, I think I do whatever it takes to get the scene, I'd say. And most of that is about bringing, a lot of times, just energy, enthusiasm, a kind of sense of, I feel like I'm responsible for the momentum of nothing is worse than a movie set in sludge that kind of enters this kind of slogging, and that it's best identified, I think, by the way I see what I do, besides trying to figure out how the scene's going to be blocked and how it's going to be edited and what shots I need to do. That I'm also trying to make sure that what ends up in those shots is not just a kind of perfunctory moment, but something indescribably delicate. Now or interesting, and I can't always make that happen, but I sometimes call it like a feather in the wind. You're chasing this take where something happens that is indescribable, that
You're chasing the perfect lap.
Yes, but it is indescribable, meaning to me, perfect cinema is when cinema is doing the thing that nothing else can do. What is the thing cinema can do that nothing else can do? It can read an actor's mind. It can get inside their mind. You could argue that happens on stage, but no, it doesn't. You're too far away, and it's too presentational. It's not the same. The lens is here, and there's no faking it. And they don't even have to, on stage, there's no, and the theater is a different tradition. The cinema is a tradition of looks and glances first, speech second. The theater is a tradition of speech first. And that I'm chasing that thing between the words, that moment, that flicker, that something that is, you cannot coach per se. You're just you're in pursuit of this thing. And so what I bring to the set is a kind of whatever energy is required, evangelical energy, determined energy, passionate energy, critical energy, whatever is required to try and get it, because an actor may feel I was bossy or difficult or demanding one day, but they will be much more angry if their work is shit. Meaning they'll really resent. I've had plenty of actors where I've pushed and that we've had crosswords or we've pissed each other off. But the thing is that they'll forgive me for in a second if they're good in the scene. If they're not good in the scene and I was really polite, they will never work with me again. So the reality is that it's all about the work and in any way, because it's what lives forever and gets strung around our necks one way or another. We have to live looking at it and having made mistakes in movies. And you can never watch the movie and I go, why did I? And now with Twitter, I have 70,000 million people going, why did he? And you're like, you're right, why did I?
I know your first cut was a lot longer, but I want to share it with the audience. Talk a little bit about your first cut versus the finished film.
Well, every movie I make,
I think you had a longer director's cut, I think.
Of this?
Yeah, didn't you? I thought you said you did.
The way you use the word director's cut, it would imply I had a cut that was mine and was finished, and then someone made me cut it shorter. So no, I mean, believe me, they would have loved this to be shorter than that. I haven't had an issue with a cut that way for years, but Copland, yes, I mean, that was a brutal process, and there's Ben movies where it's more difficult, but that's not the case in the last few years. But when you say director's cut, it's more this way they market Blu-rays with extra shit.
It was not the proper way I should have said it, but I guess what I'll say is this. Did you end up having a lot of deleted scenes?
Yes, and I'm not releasing them this time.
Ah, there we go.
Yeah, I've changed my mind. I've kind of realized that it just produces all this, what's the movie is the movie. I mean, unless if you see me do it again, it'll probably be a movie where I felt like I had to leave something behind that I really didn't want to. But that the reality is that this is the best version of the movie we managed to put together, that's for sure.
What was the last scene or two that you cut before picture locking? What almost made the movie?
There were no big scenes that were cut as much as there was the last thing I was torn about, but there was a beautiful piece of John Bernthal at the Cloverfield Airport where the Mustang thing is, where he has a longer scene with Matt when he takes him aside to talk to him inside. But I didn't think the movie could wait we needed to move along. But it was a beautiful piece of work by Bernthal, and so it was sad for me to cut. But
we have to talk about the racing scenes. Darren Prescott, I believe, was your second unit. Darren's
yes.
Yeah, Darren's done some great work. I'm curious, talk a little bit about collaborating with him And I'll start with that, and then I have a part two.
Well, collaborating with him, with Bob Nagel, who was our stunt coordinator, I mean, one of the things I'm really big on my movies is that everyone has their job and their title, but everyone's allowed to get in everyone else's shit. Like, I don't like turf. I hate turf. I hate like that. Like, don't touch my camera. That's my deal. Don't do and it exists on a lot of movie sets. But I like if the costume person has something to say about the production design, say it. It's like, I want to hear all this stuff, and sometimes the prop guy will solve the whole scene or the look or the dressing, or I mean, that it comes from any which way. And so Darren's brilliant, Bob Nagel is brilliant, but they were as much a part of it as all my editor, Mike McCusker, was on way before we started shooting, planning the Le Mans and the other races. We were using previs, using Matchbox cars on maps, using storyboards. Gabe Hardman is this brilliant comic book artist and also one of the great storyboard artists around, and he did brilliant work at first, starting to lay out keyframes, and it was a monumental effort on all sides. Darren came in after we kind of had a version of the race from beginning to end to help us figure out how we begin to do it. But all sorts of other things come to play. I mean, locations, my AD, Adam Sumner, a genius. I mean, so much planning had to go into figuring out. To give you one example why, the track at Le Mans doesn't really exist in any form like it did, you know, in the 60s. So it's now kind of graded and beautiful, with the stands are further from the track. It isn't what it was, which was so romantic and kind of crazy, which was just 8 miles of country roads, that ran past a kind of old-fashioned grandstand. And so this didn't exist in France anymore, and we had to somehow make it. And not only that, but we needed signature places: the Dunlop Bridge, the S's, the Mulsanne Strait. There were all these kind of signature sections of the track that any race fan would recognize and play a role in how they're fighting through the race, and as well as obviously the grandstand, the starting and finish line. And so we shot almost all of the track in Georgia. Most of that shot by Darren. The exterior pieces on the cars going under the Dunlop Bridge, or through the S's, or around the Mulsanne corner, or the Mulsanne Strait, and the White House corner. These were all hours and hours apart from each other in Georgia. Why? Well, we had to find places that matched what it really was, but also because you have to find places that match that you also can get to, and they'll allow you to drive cars in excess of 150 miles an hour on. So, because you're not looking entirely for racetrack, in many cases you're looking for country road, where you now, like, just think about all the details there you have to work out. You need like 4 or 5 miles of straightaway country road with poplars down this side. Also, it kind of matches France. And then you need all the people in the area to agree to allow you to drive race cars at 200 miles an hour down their country roads, and no one has to go at the wrong time to check their mail, or they're going to get impaled, right? So there's a lot of coordination, and then all this so you have 4 or 5 locations in Georgia. We built in Acqua Dulce here. We built the grandstand at an airport in Acqua Dulce. So every time you see any one of the cars do a full revolution around the track, you're seeing them leave Acqua Dulce, California. As they pass under the Dunlop Bridge, they're in Atlanta. And then as they head to the Mulsanne Strait, they're 6 hours away in another location in Georgia. And then as they round the turn again, White House corner is yet another location in Georgia. And then as they approach the grandstand, they're back in Acqua Dulce, California, and on and on and on. Now that means that when it's raining, when it's noonlight, when it's twilight, when it is night, when it's a wet down, whatever it is has to be shot to match in all of these locations. The positions of the cars have to match in all of these locations. The relative speed of these cars have to match in all of these locations. the dirt level we had graded on the cars from a 1 to a 5. Obviously the cars started at 0, completely clean. And then they get up to a 5. Then it starts to rain and they go down to a 2. So all of this had to be planned, charted. Our continuity people, our prop people, it's a monumental effort. And we prevised what we could, we planned what we could, we assigned all the numbers and color categories to every shot. But it was really complicated, and a kind of magic of movies that you feel like these cars are driving around a continuous circle, which they're not, of course.
I don't think anyone in this theater realized what went into doing that. Are you releasing some sort of like featurette to like explain to
I think
people?
we have that. Yes, I'm not against all DVD extras, but I'm not even against extra scenes. I just didn't do it with this. But yes, I think they made several things that detail this and show the previs, which was kind of pre-edited, because also as you're working on the movie now, you have we make this previs, which those of you who know or don't know is kind of like a crude cartoon we make of what the race will look like. And then as we're shooting, our editors, Mike and Drew, start to plug in the shots we've gotten and then keep the cartoon for the shots we haven't gotten. So you can kind of see this quilt slowly assembling of the pieces you need and the pieces you haven't gotten. And by the end of the shoot, I was gathering, I could see where we still needed things, and we tried to do those in Aqua Dulce, of like pick up whatever we had felt like we hadn't gotten when we were in Georgia, and so did, and Darren was working there as well, shooting whenever I'd be like at lunch, he'd be suddenly out at the airport or wherever, just doing loop-de-loops.
I'm getting keys from about Carol. Hi, Carol. Sorry. I wanted to ask before I open it up to the audience, how did you talk about the cars and getting the cars there? And was the insurance on this movie $100 million?
No. Well, I don't know what the insurance of the movie was, but the cars. There were days at the Ferrari's shop. There were days we had several $30 million cars on the set, but we couldn't. Between takes, the owner would put a ribbon and cones around it, and we couldn't drive those. Obviously, we were wrecking these cars on a daily basis and thrashing them. Also, they're bumping into each other, into railings, into camera cars. And also just getting thrashed by how hard we were driving them. And as the cars got thrashed in Le Mans. And we had a continuous body shop, we had a continuous, obviously a garage running continuously, and these cars were being rotated through it, but they're reproductions. We couldn't, it's just not possible. You can't drive a 1965, you can't do it. Any one of these cars, they'd be worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're not going to race them around the track. So we built all new. Did you when you do something like this, you put it in your rider, I'd like to take one of these home? I thought about it, and then I got in one, and they're miserable. They're the GT40 is like the most uncomfortable. It's a coffin. The windshield is in your face here. It's not like we all think of sports cars as these things with 19-point adjustable seats and whatever. That's not this. This is like a go-kart with a sheet metal seat and some crummy vinyl pad on it and the most basic controls, and then an engine the size of that takes up the whole car and drives you. You feel like you're in a piece of aluminum foil riding at 150 miles an hour, and that's why so many drivers died. Everything was really just about strapping a man to an engine and encasing him. No thought was about crash zones or roll bars. Roll bars were in fact installed after Ken's death, but there were no one even thought of just putting a simple bar to keep the chassis from crushing the driver until it happened lots of times.
It is crazy to think what those athletes and those people did back then. It's crazy. It's unbelievable. I'm definitely going to open it up to the audience. So is this on?
Yeah, it's working, yeah.
It's called the catch box. So I'm going to throw it at people, and let's see what we got in the audience. I'll hide it. I'll go right over here. Ready? Sorry. With my left hand.
Peter Miles, how much input did he give in?
A good amount, especially with Christian. He spent a lot of time with Christian before we shot, and also talked to Katrina Balfe, who played Molly, his mom, and then he's seen the film and has been and is very pleased. I think very pleased, and but a lot. I mean, a lot of any characters we could get anywhere near who were actually there. We got to. There's another, Jack McMullen plays Charlie Agapoo, who is actually a Bentley dealer in Beverly Hills now, who was, Jack is the kind of Scottish guy with the thick black hair, greased back. He was 19 at Le Mans that year, and they brought him along to France, and he's now a mature man selling Bentleys in Los Angeles, but he remembers all that and was on our set all the time and helped us a great deal. In fact, our wardrobe, in many cases, guys like Charlie they had kept in their closet all these years what they wore, and they brought it to our costume department, and they manufactured, perfect facsimiles of what it was for our whole pit crew. And in many, our screenwriters, Jez and John Henry, talked to Carroll Shelby before he died. I didn't get a chance to. But on and on and on. And a lot of our drivers were the sons of well-known drivers, and brought their stories. Even Darren and Nagel knew a lot of these people and knew stories. I mean, we had a tremendous amount of wealth of knowledge. The toughest thing you have when you make a real life story, honestly, is there's the age-old battle of what's most interesting and what's true, and trying to find the balance of that. But there's also the fact that what's true is the deeper you dive into anything, I'm sure you've all found this in your areas of expertise, the deeper you dive into anything, the more you realize there are such multiple versions of what is true, meaning that people don't agree on what happened and they remember it differently, and not coincidentally, they all remember it in ways that make them the greatest hero of their story. And so you end up having to play a role as you're constructing a movie like this, in which you're trying to thread the needle through what seems to you most likely it happened, as opposed to because the stories don't all line up.
But also, don't you have to balance the truth with when you're making a 2-hour or a little over 2-hour movie? Like, you're making a movie, but you're also trying to be as honest as you can to what really happened.
Yeah, my goal is to create, like movies are not really the best format to get your history. So that my job at first is, I think, but I do think I have a role. We're saying it's a true story, so I can't I can't make shit up. But I also can't, I feel like the thing I can best do is make you feel like you knew these people. You knew this place. You get the tone of the world in a way that, whenever they're in a documentary, they're performing. But what were they like when, what is Carroll Shelby like? When Carroll has his kind of Cal Worthington-y thing he does when he's on camera, but what happens when Carroll isn't on camera? What is it like? And so I'm trying to capture something that you wouldn't get in a promotional video or an interview where someone, like I am right now, is controlling what you see of me. I want to know what they're like in the kitchen making an egg sandwich. That's what that's what the movie's best at, in a way.
Sure. Can you throw right there? No, I'll go right there in a second.
You talk into this thing. How about
That's very good there.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, James. Tom Stoller, Vintage Motorsport Magazine. Very entertaining movie right off the bat.
Thank you.
How much did you know about motor racing going into this, and what do you know now? And second part of the question is, did you go back and look at some of the epic films from the 60s and early 70s, like Le Mans?
Of course. I mean, that's easy to answer.
Frankenheimer's Grand Prix.
That's my favorite, the last one. Yeah,
Okay.
Frankenheimer's. But yes, not only that, but there was recently released, I think, and we got a lot of it, all these B-roll and extra footage from Le Mans, from McQueen's movie. There was all this other footage that they never got used that was really amazing. And for a moment, when we were trying to figure out how to make the movie cheaper, we thought, well, do we use this stuff? And I don't think it ever works when you try and combine old stuff and new stuff. It always looks like sad to me. Like, yeah, it looks like old stuff and new stuff. And your other questions were motorsports and what did I know before and after. Very little. I learned almost anything I know about motorsports. I learned making this movie, doing the interviews and doing the but I don't think it hurt me in a way. For those of you who aren't into motorsports, like I think that my angle on the movie or my journey making the movie was one of trying to figure out. Not only did I not know much, I did not find it that interesting. Meaning, I mean, I found the cars, the design beautiful, and I love gear. Like I came up making movies. I love lenses. I love gear, and I can see how people get into cars in terms of getting into the GAC and the gear, and I can understand that. But what I didn't get was that whenever I watched races, they seemed really boring to me. And I love sports, but they seemed boring to me because they were essentially like, and the yellow car is ahead of the blue car, and the blue car is pulling into the pits, and the red car is getting ahead of the yellow car, and the yellow car is falling back. The yellow car is getting back, the yellow car is in the front again. And it's like, why? What? Like, I have no and then I hear a bunch of older guys talking about yellow car, he's either having a problem or yellow cars, and it's like, I'm never in this. When I watch football, I know the quarterback's hurt his knee and he's trying to play through it. I know when I watch tennis, I know what they're fighting against or the injury they had or why this serve is so hard for them on this side. When I watch motorsports, I'm just watching people guessing at what's going on inside some commercial colored bubble with all these stickers. First of all, I find that revolting, just the level of sponsorship has gotten fucking so, I mean, look how beautiful it looked when they didn't smother it like STP and Smuckers and every other fucking thing. But on top of that,
We're at the Logan level of the Q&A now.
right. But the other thing was just that it made me realize what I thought I had to do to make it interesting, which is I have to get inside that chassis. I have to get inside that helmet. I didn't even know why he's downshifting, why he's going into the pits. I want to get to what they can't do on television, which is understanding what the driver and the guys in the pit and also the idea in those days when they didn't have a radio, so there's no, you send a guy out in the car, you know, except for holding a chalk sign as he passes by, there's no way to communicate to him at all. This gets really fascinating, and I feel like it's such an interesting world then to bring the audience into, because once they understand the rules of it all, I don't mean the rules like the sporting rules, I also mean like the rules of the world, like just like you're making a science fiction movie. This world has its own language and its own protocols, and that you once I got into all that, which I have to do a decent job, which I hope you think I did, then that education is what allows me to kind of make the movie.
One comment I will make. My father was one of the framers of the sports marketing business, which put all the stickers on the cars. So,
I'm so sorry.
no, you know what? I'm not offended. You made a great movie. Thank you, James.
All right.
Before you throw that real quick, I have to say, I'm actually of the exact same opinion of you when I love sports as well, and I've always wondered, watching in the circles, you brought me in. I actually gave a shit watching these races because you know what I mean, you took it behind.
Well, you love the characters.
Yes.
And then you also understand why they're doing, I mean, I don't go to nth level of it, but you understand, you get a sense of when they're kind of, they're tailing another car and waiting for their opportunity, or waiting for the straightaway, or not trying to burn out too fast, or not trying to blow their engine, or whatever it is, just at least some awareness of or when their door won't close, which is true, by the way. His first lap at Le Mans, his door wouldn't close. And I loved I mean, to me, the irony, it was the kind of thing like you could never write that. You'd never have your great heroes setting off, and in the first lap of it's like they can't close the door of their car.
You realize most people are going to think this is Hollywood bullshit. Like that, the door not closing.
Yeah, I give up on those people. Most people. Why would that be Hollywood bullshit? It's not making anyone look better.
No, but you know what I mean. Like, anyway.
Whatever. Everyone's going to think something's bullshit.
Right. I want to, can you go right there? Yes.
One, I really liked the movie, and
Thank you.
in the last race car scene, how much was real and how much was CGI?
You mean the whole Le Mans? You mean the big
yeah.
last race?
Yeah.
Yeah. The cars are all real. The part that's CG is, and we built the main grandstand. So when they're in the pits and you're seeing the crowd above them. But when you look raking shots, like if I were shooting Matt here and the crowd above him, this would all be real and real extras. And if I were shooting this way, shooting like raking along, it would be real. It would be real for another 100 or 200 feet, and then it would be a green screen, and then the magic of CG would extend. And when you're looking across the road, the opposite side, we again had kind of a front wall and extras for the first couple rows. But then, obviously, well, not obviously, maybe for you, but I didn't have 20,000 extras every day. So those stands filled with people, the closer people are real people, and the distance is being done by CG. Sometimes also there's there's rigging on the cars that the CG would remove, but the cars themselves, we shot real cars. I think there's 2 shots where there features like cars that have been reskinned or something like that to make something match. But we did all this. That was the magic of what Darren and his team did, is we really shot cars moving.
Let's throw it right over there.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm great, man. Fantastic movie. I day played on this for a little while, so it's really it's a pleasure.
Where were you? Where were you working?
I did the fight scene and with Matt. And,
Oh, right.
And Christian, and then did a couple of the Le Mans scenes that we did up in what was it, like Lancaster?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Hot, and then like the
Yeah, no one knows that. The first couple weeks, the whole opening race at Willow Springs, it was 115 degrees when we were shooting, and I mean, it's like I watch it and I'm like, you don't feel it. It's just like it was so brutal.
There were like umbrellas flying everywhere. Pop-up tents were just going every which way. It was wild.
Wait, so what's the question?
Question. Mutual admiration for Bruce Springsteen. A couple years ago, I read this article or something, an interview with you, saying you had this fantastic idea of a film in between Born to Run and Darkness on the Edge of Town. And I love it. I've always envisioned something like that. And I am so curious to know if that's still an interest in you. And
Yeah.
yeah, I can tell. And also, what is it about Bruce and his music and his poetry that inspires you and keeps you going?
Well, it's an interesting question. He was a huge part of my artistic experience and and teaching me how to write. I think he's a great storyteller. I mean, there's some people who tell stories in songs, and other people sing about kind of conditions. I always think there's 2 kinds of songs. The songs where someone's telling you like, don't do this or always do that, or it's like advice songs. And then there's the songs where someone's just telling you a story. And Springsteen's influenced by other great people, but because growing up on the East Coast in the 70s and 80s, when he was coming into being and making all those great albums, those songs are a great lesson in writing and how little you need. It is what to me is the great lesson of Springsteen is how economically you can tell a story, and how for us, those of us who are writers, how hard we try to avoid sometimes just telling a story. I met a little girl, and I settled down in a little house out on the edge of town. We got married and swore we'd never part, but little by little, we drifted from each other's hearts. Story. What? 21 words. The word little appears 4 times, but it doesn't matter. It's like, it's not colorful. I don't know the color of the sky. I don't know what the clouds were like. I don't know the color of the house. Who gives a shit? I know it's a story of heartbreak. And I know it's a story where they went in with one idea about where they were going, and life betrayed them. Something betrayed them. And it's so few words. And so often we get in the way of emotion. And not only that, but the other thing, to go on this digression with you, is the other thing I love about Springsteen is we're in an age of irony where meaning it and feeling it is not cool. It's so much easier to make fun of shit than it is to do shit. and everyone makes fun, whether it's Twitter or YouTube or just the way people talk, people are just knocking down shit all day long. But what have you fucking made? And that, to me, Springsteen represents someone who's telling stories about feelings, and feelings are less cool right now. You know, I mean, the fact that this movie is called Old Fashioned is as much a result of how far we've traveled into the age of irony than it is of anything else, because it's just like, it's just that. I think you get what I'm saying, yeah.
Let's go, hold on, let's go all the way to the back, right over there.
Stolen Car's amazing, by the way.
What's that?
Stolen Car.
Yes.
Great movie. Leo Beebe, was he a real character, and was he that much of a dick?
Well, yes, he was a real character. I mean, Josh, I think gave him there was some special sauce with Josh that I think made him extra annoying. But he did do what he did. He did slow Ken down. He did decide that a tie or the three cars crossing together would be better for Ford than Ken winning by several laps, and he knew how much it meant to him, and they did at Ford, Beebe and others, have anxiety about Ken as a driver. He was left behind the first time they went. I do think that there were more people that Beebe ended up representing, probably what several more cynical or kind of corporate-minded executives were feeling. But I also feel like, you know, the way you tell a narrative, I'm a big believer in writing that there is no bad guy. Like, if there's anything I could tell you as a writer other than write every day, that's important about writing, is that don't use bad guy talk or villain talk. It will screw up your movie. That, like, everybody's got a reason. Everybody, you know, Leo Beebe was a company man. He actually, he went to war with Henry Ford II. They were in the service together. They came back. He was like his younger brother, who wasn't his younger brother. He was very protective of Henry Ford II. Their company was floundering. The whole reason they went to Le Mans and spent all this money was not to win a race, really, but was publicity to sell cars. So in the end, is Leo Beebe a villain, or is he just pursuing why he came there, which is to get publicity for his company? And that's why they did it. And is it naive of us to wish for them to be something they weren't? I do. It was amazing to me. That was one of the reasons I did the movie, was when I got to the point reading the story where I realized also, when you guys see the poster, I'm sure everyone thinks, oh yeah, the underdogs are gonna take a Ferrari, of course they're gonna win. And it's like that there's something different about the way this story unspooled, that there's something unique about the relationship of commerce and art, or commerce and sport, and that the reality made that more interesting, made the story more interesting to me, because it wasn't just, you know, it wasn't Rudy with cars, you know.
I think we're basically out of time. But I want to. Do you mind doing like a lightning? You give long answers, but I want to see if we can do. Like,
I'll try and do a lightning round. Yes.
Right. So a lightning round means like we try to go through some questions really fast. So you want to throw right there. So the idea is fast questions, fast answers.
And good throws.
Yes, and good throws.
All right, Henry Ford, that was a great character. What was it like casting that?
I love Tracy Letts. I wanted him the first choice for it. I was thrilled that he did it. He's a great actor, great writer too, and I thought he did an amazing job.
Especially in the scene where he's driving.
You're not, you're fucking up the
I
line.
know. Sorry. I'm sorry. My fault. You're right.
Quick question. Some of your movies you write and direct, and some of them it seems like you step in a process that's already ongoing. How does that change your process?
All the movies I write, someone get credit.
Oh, perfect.
Ooh. Wait.
I mean, I don't mean I'm the sole writer. I just mean I never stop tweaking scenes, rewriting scenes, or even screenwriting. But until only about 5 years ago, the threshold for a director to get writing credit was higher than a writer. So they've changed that. But in my past, there's movies that I don't have writing credit on, where I would have passed the threshold to get the credit now, but didn't then. I'm editing is writing, directing is writing, writing is writing, acting is writing. Again, turf. Not a big believer in it. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I want to ask, you recently agreed with Macquarie about new filmmakers. New filmmakers is basically like a lottery for them. And then he later said like it's basically almost no lottery at all. And I was just curious, if you were a new filmmaker now, what would you do to try to achieve success from scratch?
Chris's point had nothing to do with a lottery. Chris's point was, well, he meant the lottery like probably...
Oh, the chances of it.
Yes, of winning.
Yes.
That it's like when you watch some sad soul buying a roll of those stickers in the those tickets in the gas station for the young screenwriters who are asking, how can I get my script in the right place? You're the equivalent to Chris of the person buying one of the scratch things. That his point is, and it's entirely in alignment with me, is if you're trying to make it in any craft, apply your craft. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I meet who wrote one screenplay and then they start going about selling their one screenplay. And it's like, imagine if you were a carpenter and you were in Vermont and you made one chair and then you left your workplace and you traveled with your chair to New York to sell your one chair. And then everyone's like, was that all you did? And it's like, yeah, isn't it beautiful? And it's like, well, why don't you make more of them? And that to me there's this, and it's fueled by the fact that we read, sorry, this is interesting to talk about. The fact that we read about people getting famous and successful really fast, and we watch all these people get rich doing bullshit on the internet and then getting rich really fast, and we get jealous and we want to have success really soon. But if you love filmmaking, or if you love whatever craft you have, why do you want to be successful really soon with whatever shit you can make now if you know you can be better later? Why do you want to get, it's only the kind of the Kardashian mentality that has us trying to get to someplace before we're even ready to do anything with it. Because I gotta make my score, I gotta get in the door. No, you gotta make your shit good. Like, because what Chris is saying is that if your work is undeniably good, every door will open. You don't have to scratch any tickets. You don't have to worry about, the doors will open. People go, did you see that thing that kid made? Get him in here, as opposed to you knocking at all. And that there's way too much calculation about how I can play the system, as opposed to how about I just make shit that is so fucking good that people just go, that's really good, and tell everyone else about it. And that's what Chris was talking about.
Can I ask something real quick for that? Mainly, he was on the podcast with Brian Koppelman recently.
Yeah.
And he was saying how he feels like he didn't direct Usual Suspects, and basically he feels like he's trapped now. And like ever since he failed with Wave the Gun, that he's not taken as like a serious director basically. And he's never.
You gotta talk to him about his psychology.
No, but basically I was gonna say like, do you feel like that
he's fine, man?
Yeah,
he landed on his feet. Directors have to like
he's good.
direct right away from themselves instead of like just handing it off as just a writer.
Whatever it is, Chris everyone has a path. I wrote Oliver and Company. Like, we all have paths.
Hey, let's just throw it right over here because I think we got to wrap. We'll just do one. Whoa.
Thank you. I just gotta say, this was amazing. This movie, my hands are like sweating from watching these races.
Good.
But I've kind of become an advocate for the stunt community, and I recently saw a article where John Bernthal, I don't know if I'm saying his last name.
That's right.
Yeah, stood up for stunts, and he was acknowledging the stunt community and saying that they should be recognized with an Oscar category of their own. I was wondering what your opinion was of that.
I think it would be great. I just don't know how I think the trickiest thing is just the way most of the craft Oscars work is that it just goes the one with the most, that attracts the most attention. So that it's just, but I'm totally in support of anyway that the stunt community gets honored. And in fact, toward that, in regard to this film, because everyone's always asking, how much do the actors do? As little as we could help them do, as possible, honestly. They have families and we want them to go home to them, and they're not trained drivers. They're very good and very skilled, but if you're not supposed to text and drive, you're certainly not supposed to act and drive. And you're certainly not supposed to act and drive at 100 plus miles an hour. So this movie is a magnificent amount of work by incredibly dedicated. I mean, we had some of the greatest drivers in the world assembled driving these cars, and even when you see Christian behind the wheel, it's not green screen, but it's Christian in this vehicle we built called the Biscuit, and we also had one called the Buck, but the Biscuit, where a stunt driver would be sitting either on top of the car or in the rear, driving for him. The controls were subsumed to another a place on the car, and so he was in a car that was, I could pan almost 300 degrees and not see any gear, and it looks like he's driving, but he's not driving. Command and control of the car is elsewhere, as it should be, and having a professional focused on nothing. But that's why you can see the other cars right out his window, as he is moving at high speed past other stunt drivers slaloming through, because we've choreographed all that, but he's not actually guiding his vehicle. That's a guy with a radio talking to everyone else, making sure everyone's safe.
Just
Awesome. I just also, this film just felt like metaphorically it meant so much, seeing the athletes against commerce and artists against commerce in the same way, kind of like how the stunt community is fighting against corporate.
Well, it's hard. It's hard. The whole entertainment industry is a tough world.
I was just going to say that I especially enjoyed the pathetic fight scene between Damon and Bale.
Which was also choreographed, by the way, but choreographed pathetically.
Yes. On that note, I really want to commend you for making one of the best films of the year.
Thank you, Steve.
I really mean that. A huge thank you to IMAX and 20th Century Fox for being awesome partners and letting us screen the movie early, and especially a thank you to James Mangold for coming out and doing this Q&A.
Thank you. Thanks for the great questions, too. Really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.